Don't take the value per square meter it costs to build a house that somebody provides on Facebook as gospel. It will cause you severe problems because you have to get that figure right, and there's many reasons why you are not able to do that from the figure that they provide. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons and things to watch out for, and also then the solution, how we solve that problem. And we certainly don't look on Facebook for the answer. And incidentally, if you're interested in property development, I have the whole process in this book, You a Property Developer, which you can get for free by just paying for the postage and packaging. Go to the website youapropertydeveloper.com and grab your copy now. It's critical that you get this figure right, and the reason for that is that if you don't get this right, you're going to pay too much for the land that you are buying. So let's briefly look at the cost model. So we've got GDV, and GDV is gross development value. In other words, it's what the entire site developed, in other words, all built out, would sell for. Everything that's on that site, so if it's 10 houses, what's the value of those 10 houses as a selling value? That's the maximum you're going to be able to sell that development site out for once it's completed. And then we take off our profit. And so our profit is a percentage of GDV. And usually we work on a build profit of at least 25%. And then we also talk about a land development profit that we should be making as well. But we take the profit off, and then we got a third element, which is our costs. And these are broken down into 2 areas, development costs and build costs. And then finally, we have the amount of money that we are going to pay for land. So gross development value, less profit, less cost gives us what our value is. In this video, what we're really talking about is the costs. And if you get that figure wrong, then you're going to end up paying too much for here. So if you overstate that by 10%, you've paid for too much for your land, and that therefore is going to affect your profit. So this is why you fundamentally have to get this right. So the first thing that we're going to actually look at is the costs, because there's a confusion. As I just said, there are 2 different types of costs. There's development costs and there's build costs. So when somebody provides a figure, what's actually in that figure? What we determine as costs, build costs, is the actual structure itself. What is the actual structure cost to build that? Every other cost is a development cost. Now, the significance and why we make a distinction between the build costs and development costs is that the build costs, so if we are building 5 houses of the same type, those costs are going to be the same for each of those 5 houses. However, the development costs will vary, and in fact, actually there's economies of scales as you go up the number of houses that you build, because you've got those costs that are going to be there irrespective of whether you build 1 house or 5 houses. Things such as planning permission, building regulations. Yes, there's some variations in there, but you do get economies of scales. So it's really understanding what's included in that. And if you don't actually know the separation of that, so if you take a build cost, they put it as a build cost, but actually there's other costs in there. How do you know whether they're in that cost or not in that cost? So that's the first aspect of it. The second is how's the project managed. So there's essentially several ways route to market. First of all, you can have a complete turnkey system where you bring in a main contractor, you hand over the project to them, and they simply hand you the keys at the end of the project. So that will be the highest value cost, and one of the reasons for that is because they have to build in contingencies which you will be paying for whether you use them or not. The second is going to be where you perhaps bring in a project manager, and the project manager manages the process for you, and that will be usually a fixed fee or a percentage of the project value. And so therefore, That will be less expensive than the main contractor because they won't have to build in the contingencies. Yes, you want to have the contingencies in there, but if you don't use them, then that becomes the additional profit to yourself. And then there's the third way where you take on the role of project manager. Obviously, you're not going to pay the project manager a fee, although I suggest as the project manager, you should be paying yourself a salary for that. But at least that's the money going in your pocket and not somebody else's pocket. So that will have an effect on the way that the project is costed out. So project management is one of the areas. So the third area is design complexity. The simplest house to build is a square box or an oblong box and put on a straight roof. But it has all the charm of a 1950s council house. So you're going to have certainly some design complexity that is greater than just a square box. But every time you turn a corner, every time you change an angle on a roof, an angle in the actual construction and look of the particular property, you're going to add expenditure to that. Because simply, if you turn a corner, and let's take timber frame construction, instead of having one batten, you're going to have 3 battens. All right, doesn't seem like very significant, but then you slow down the process in terms of the block work because they have to turn a corner. That has to then be fitted in as opposed to a straight row. So design complexity will add to your cost. You're certainly going to need certain design complexity, but the increase in design complexity will add to the cost, and that's why you don't know when somebody's quoting you, this is how much it costs to build a house, what the complexity is of their design. The fourth, and often beyond your control, is local vernacular. These things are out with your control. There may be some design aspects that are peculiar to the particular area that you are building in. So for instance, one may be that all the houses around there have slate roofs. Slate roofs are more expensive to install than concrete tile roofs. Firstly, because the materials are more expensive, but secondly, it's a much more complex roof laying process, and therefore your labor cost is going to be higher. Have they got dormer windows, so room in the roof type buildings, 1.5 story buildings, room in the roof? Do they have dormers or do they have skylights? Skylights are certainly far cheaper than dormers, but dormers are much more attractive than skylights. So local vernacular will determine a lot of the costs that you have no control of, such as, for instance, maybe stonework in an area like the Cotswolds. So that's something that you need to factor into there. And again, there's no way of knowing when somebody quotes you £1 per square meter whether that has been factored in or what's in their particular area. The fifth area is finishes, and these finishes are internal and external. And this is why you very much have to take control at a later stage of the planning application process, what your architect specifies, because they can push up your costs considerably. So what are the external finishes going to be? Is it simply going to be a render, perhaps a wet dash or dry dash render, or is it going to be a smooth render, which might be a little bit more expensive? Or are they putting in large cladding? Are they putting in stonework? So those are going to be much more expensive finishes. And then when we look at the internals, what is the internals going to be? Are we going to put in a standard kitchen that might cost us £3,000, £4,000, £5,000? Or are we going to put in a kitchen that's £20,000, £30,000? What type of bathrooms are we going to put in? How many bathrooms are there relative to the size of the house? Because the larger the house and proportionately the same number of bathrooms, so take a 4-bedroom house that perhaps is 150 square meters, let's say, and they have 4 bathrooms, and then you take a 300 square meter house and they still have 4 bathrooms. Proportionately, the bathrooms become a lesser cost unless you high spec them up to the larger square meterage of the house, because your costs, so the bathrooms and kitchens are going to be an expensive element within the house, but if the square meterage is higher, then proportionately that value then comes down, unless of course it is a higher value. So how do we solve that? Because what we're really essentially saying here is the build per square meter in your area is very much down to your particular area and the particular type of house that you are going to be building. And so we have solved this problem because we have training courses, our Property Developers Mastery Program, for instance, and we needed to solve this for our students. And so what we've done is we've created a build cost model. And I'm just briefly going to show you this build cost model, just so that you can see the level of detail that we go into to produce a really effective cost in your area for that particular build. So I want you to come over to our membership site and we're going to have a look at how we solve this problem. So if we go into the GDV part, we have a workbook which I'm now going to download. There's many tabs here, but what we're actually interested in is the build cost model, which is part of this. This is what we use actually for a complete viability assessment. So all these figures here essentially is a model house that we have created, but all these figures here in green are already set for you. And the way that we actually influence that, because what we're actually looking to do is to come out with a cost per square meter. Now this is was created several years ago, and so you will see that the values of there are way out of line with today's values. But how we actually change these figures here is that we ask you to really research what are the labor rates in your area in terms of that, and also your plant costs and any preliminaries. And then we also have materials, and we supply a complete listing of materials with quantities, which you then get a quote for, and then you're able to put these figures into here. And what this does is it then automatically changes all these figures here. So every task that is involved in building a house is in this particular build cost model, and it gives the lengths of time. So the labor times the hourly rate of labor, or the day rate of labor, times the actual time it takes to complete that task is then altered, and then this then does the same for materials, because you put in what the current value of materials are. And this allows you to be able to create the figures for your area and gives you a complete solution. So I hope you found that useful, and if you're interested in pursuing property development as a business, then visit our website, builditandprosper.com. We've got various options. The first option is simply get a copy of my book, You a Property Developer. We have experience days, and then we have our premium program, which is Property Developers Mastery, where we can essentially give you all the training that you need to become a successful property developer and support you on your journey. If you've liked this video, please like and share it. If you are new to the channel or haven't already subscribed, then I encourage you to subscribe. There's well over 200 videos in this channel, so there's lots of information for you to be able to consume for free, and please do that. And I thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and until the next time, take care. Bye-bye.